Welcome guys, welcome back to Minko's Corner once again. Today we're back. We're back with another video. Today we're going to be reacting to a video about the Pentagon. I don't know that much about the Pentagon. The only thing I know is that on 9/11 it was blown up by a plane. I know that all the military in the US is stationed there, like the High Command, but that's basically it. So I hope you like my reaction. Welcome to Minko, by the way, Minko's Corner. Yeah, if you like my reaction, give a like and let's go in.
Today's video takes you inside the Pentagon, the nerve center for the modern US war machine. And if you want to lead a war machine of your very own, then great news, because today's video is sponsored by Conflict of Nations, a free online strategy game that gathers 5 floors, 5 rings, 5 sides, arranged in a pentagonal shape. You wouldn't know just by looking at it that contained within its humble walls is the command apparatus for the most powerful military that the world has ever seen, the United States Department of Defense. The words the Pentagon have become shorthands for American military power, and the building itself is seen as a symbol so potent it became a target for the worst terrorist attack ever committed on US soil. But what is this building anyway? Why was it built?
Dude, look at that parking lot. Are you kidding me, bro? How many people work in there? Like 100,000? I don't know if 100,000 people work there, but it must be more than 1,000.
The way it was. How does it work, and what exactly goes on within its walls?
Building the Pentagon. Yeah, who built that shit?
During the First World War, the War Department, at the time a cabinet department,
Is it just me? This building is fire. Are you kidding me, bro? This is a nice building. This is
responsible for the US Army experienced an unprecedented level of growth to meet the demands of the war effort. The department quickly ran out of space in their headquarters building, known as the State War Navy Building, because it housed all 3 government departments, and temporary buildings were put up all over Washington, D.C. Manpower didn't shrink after the war ended, and in fact, both the War Department and the Navy Department continued to expand in the 1920s and 1930s, running out of office space even in the temporary buildings that were put up 20 years before. A new building was needed, one large enough to accommodate the needs of a growing military infrastructure, commensurate with how important the United States was becoming on the world stage. A building site was chosen across the Potomac River in Arlington County, Virginia, not far from Arlington National Cemetery. The original land site chosen was in the shape of a pentagon, so the building was designed to fit within the boundaries. However, a new site was eventually settled on that did not have such space constraints, but President Franklin Roosevelt liked the pentagonal design because it reminded him of old-style star-shaped fortifications from the 18th and 19th centuries. Ground was broken on the building in September 1941, and the speed.
There were a lot of star-shaped fortresses, but so basically it was Franklin Delano Roosevelt who decided that, you know what, we have a lot of space there, but I like the shape of this.
The speed of construction was ramped up after the US entered World War I following the attack on Pearl Harbor in December. Steel was in short supply, being needed to make weapons for the war effort, so construction was done using reinforced concrete, with over 650,000 tons of sand being dredged up from the nearby river to mix with the cement. The steel shortage also explains why ramps were built instead of elevators throughout the building. The local contractors ensured that the new construction complied with Virginia's segregation laws, building identical bathrooms next to each other that were supposed to be separate facilities for white and black employees. However, when President Roosevelt toured the site in 1942, he was unimpressed and ordered the whites-only signs be taken down. When the governor of Virginia complained to the president about this, he replied that although the Pentagon was in Virginia, it was federal property and was to be staffed by federal employees and not beholden to.
The guy's like, bitch, you know, it's in Virginia, but relax. Okay, relax. It might be in Virginia, but it's my thing, so.
Virginia law. Roosevelt got his way, and for 20 years the Pentagon was the only building in Virginia where segregation laws were not enforced. The unique twin bathrooms remained, but have been used by everyone since they were built.
Isn't that fucked up? But the Pentagon was the only
Construction was completed in January 1943, a remarkable feat of engineering, especially considering the drain on manpower and materials imposed on the construction by the war. The building was a behemoth, too, over 6.5 million square feet of floor space, by far the largest office building in the world. It was also incredibly efficient. Since you could cut across the central courtyard, it was possible to get anywhere within the Pentagon from anywhere else in less than 10 minutes of walking, much faster than
the building, because it's made of concrete, it's pretty ugly. You know, it's I'll say it. From above, it's disgusting. With all the different buildings, But all the facades are pretty alright. They're not that disgusting. But it's a concrete building. That's unfortunately the thing with America is that you can see there are very few cities in America that don't look the same. Same with in Russia as well. Listen, in Russia, because of the Soviet Union, there are cities, same city in Vladivostok that there is the one in Moscow. So the same neighborhoods.
The building had been rectangular shaped. The Pentagon was occupied by the War Department for the remainder of the Second World War. When the war ended, President Harry Truman proposed reorganizing the armed forces of the United States into a more streamlined command structure. This was realized in 1947 when the Army, Navy, and newly created Air Force were placed within the new Department of Defense. As the biggest and newest building the armed forces had, it only made sense that the whole command structure be located in the Pentagon. Today, the Pentagon houses 25,000 military and civilian employees of the Department of Defense, including the Secretary and Deputy Secretary of Defense.
25,000. I mean, look. Okay, am I wrong? From above, it looks like a fucking mall. It's disgusting. It is ugly as hell from above. The facades. There's a little bit more neoclassical, architecture going on. With the columns and the marble, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there are worse buildings, but
of the Army, Navy, and Air Force. The Joint Chiefs of Staff, the highest-ranking military officers of each branch of service, also have their offices in the Pentagon. The command and control structure for the entire United States military is all located in this one massive building, including the National Military Command Center,
looks like
which
it
is
hasn't
where
been
the President
redecorated
of the
since
United States
1947.
and the Secretary of Defense would run a war should one break out. It is also where the famous red telephone that connects Washington to Moscow, which is today actually a computer link that allows email communication, is located, and it is where the presidents would give the orders to launch America's nuclear arsenal, should that ever become necessary. The place is practically a self-contained city. Located within its two below-ground floors are all manner of shopping facilities, including restaurants.
Is that a park? Or is that like this thing here? And they love the Pentagon. Look at this. The Pentagon shape here, Pentagon shape here. I'm sure you walk throughout the building and there are Pentagon shaped everywhere.
Coffee shops, 3 different banks, a pharmacy, a jeweler, a florist, hair and nail salons, a dry cleaning service, a post office, and a Virginia Department of Motor Vehicles branch. You can do everything from see a dentist to rent a movie without ever having to leave the grounds of the Pentagon. In the center of the Pentagon complex is a 5-acre courtyard, well-manicured lawns, gardens, and big trees that remind visitors of being in a public park. It is a good place to take a break from the stressful work of running the American military and get some fresh air. In the middle of the courtyard is a cafe known colloquially as Ground Zero, a bit of dark humor referring to the fact that if the Pentagon was ever targeted by a nuclear missile, the cafe would likely be the bullseye of the resulting explosion.
That's funny. That's fucking hilarious. It's really dark humor when you think about it, but it's fucking hilarious. A symbol for good and ill.
By the time of the Vietnam War, the Pentagon was already being viewed as more than just an office building. It was seen as a symbol of American military power, both at home and abroad, and because of the important role it played in organizing and overseeing the conflict in Southeast Asia, it was a natural target for protesters against it. On October the 21st, 1967, a large anti-war demonstration saw 100,000 people pack the National Mall around the Lincoln Memorial to hear speeches by luminaries including Dr. Benjamin Spock and civil rights activist and future Georgia Congressman John Lewis. This crowd was then led on a protest march across the river to the steps of the Pentagon. The crowd is believed to have been numbered somewhere between 35 and 50,000. They were stopped by a human barricade of soldiers from the famed 82nd Airborne Division.
I'm gonna say this and comment if I'm wrong or anything, but is it just me or do protests do nothing? Protests, do they really do anything? When there was huge protests in 2003, 2004 for Bush not to enter the war in Iraq, nobody gave a fuck. There were protests in Europe, and they entered anyways. 2011, 2012, the Wall Street protests. I remember 99%, all that. They were destroyed. What changed? Nothing. So isn't just protests are just there so that people get to vent out. They get to yell at the top of their lungs. Tear down whoever, and then they go away 3 months later. I mean,
division who held the protesters back at bayonet point. These protesters were the original flower children and trying to demonstrate their commitment to peace by sticking flowers inside the barrels of the soldiers' guns. Some protesters attempted to break through to get inside the building, and the whole thing threatened to devolve into a riot. Soldiers and US Marshals deployed tear gas, and some protesters were clubbed with rifle butts. The drama was over by midnight, but the March on the Pentagon marked a dramatic escalation in violent standoffs between anti-war demonstrators and government authorities that would come to a head in the 1970 Kent State shootings, in which National Guard troops fired into a crowd of protesters at a university in Ohio, killing 4 students.
This would... Okay, so America still, we have I'm not American, but, in the West, we have our own Tiananmen Square that nobody talks about.
Not be the last time the Pentagon would come under attack from anti-war protesters. On May the 19th, 1972,
it shows that we're not so different.
In the 4th floor women's restroom of the Air Force wing of the building. No one was hurt, but the blast caused an estimated $80,000 worth of damage, and the resulting flooding destroyed computer tapes that held classified information. The bomb was placed by a member of Weather Undergrounds, the radical left-wing group that was associated
with the change of name. Jesus Christ, what are you?
And what they called American imperialism worldwide. The group also bombs the Capitol building.
You're gonna take down American imperialism with a name like Weather Underground? You're gonna get lost at the building. Are you kidding me?
Then's the US State Department headquarters during that same period.
A major facelift.
By the 1990s, the Pentagon was beginning to show its age. In the 50 years that had passed since its construction, the way business was done had been completely transformed by new technology. The building predated the advent of personal computers, fax machines, and video teleconferencing, and had originally been designed with only one analog telephone for every 3 employees. As time went on, the occupants of the various offices simply added whatever new technology they needed to do their jobs on top of the existing systems, creating an unplanned hodgepodge of internal infrastructure that simply wasn't sustainable. The building itself was also out of date. The building had been designed with air conditioning and had been constructed with multiple dangerous materials, including asbestos, that has since been banned. The office space had become cramped and inefficient. Plumbing and electrical systems were out of date and not in compliance with modern fire code, and the building needed both elevators and escalators installed to facilitate ease of movement throughout the massive building. What was needed was an almost complete redesign of the internal structure of the building without touching the exterior walls. The Pentagon Renovation project, PenRen, began in 1998 with one side of the building, or Wedge, being completely cleared out, staff being moved to temporary office space located off-site, and the entire vacated section being gutted and remodeled. Following the completion of Wedge 1, the PenRen project would systematically move around the building, renovating each wedge in turn until completed. The entire remodel was expected to take 15 years to complete, but an unexpected event would throw the entire schedule into disarray and call into question the future of the Pentagon itself.
2001? Okay. Or was it
on September the 11th, 2001, at about 9:35 in the morning, the entire Pentagon was on high alert. Most everyone in the building knew by then that...
Where were you guys on 9/11? I was 5 when it happened. I don't remember that much. Do I even remember anything? I think I remember something happened. I remember maybe I remember something, but I don't even remember that.
2 hijacked airliners had crashed into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in New York City, and many people were probably watching the live coverage of the burning buildings on TV. Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld was in his office in the Pentagon overseeing the initial military response to the ongoing crisis. Suddenly, the entire building shook violently as though hit by an earthquake, but the reality was far more horrible. The 3rd hijacked plane, American Airlines Flight 77, had just slammed into the west side of the Pentagon, flying at over 500 miles an hour. This instantly disintegrated the aircraft and sent a fireball 200
feet. And they destroyed this is gonna sound weird, but apparently this is completely out of I don't have the information. It was a long time ago since I heard this, but apparently in that side of the building that the plane blew up, there was about to be an investigation where was it $1 trillion? A bunch of money went away, disappeared from the budget of the military. And it was supposed to be a story and all that, and then 9/11 happened, and that particular building where all the documents of all that blew up. So, I'm not saying anything, okay? I'm just saying
sky. The plane pulverized the outer wall of the building, penetrating as far as the third ring, more than 300 feet inside. The jet fuel explosion set off fires around the impact zone that eventually reached a temperature of 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Many people inside the Pentagon rushed to the scene of the crash and began administering first aid to the injured. They were soon joined by an army of firefighters from Arlington, Alexandria, and Washington, D.C., who worked tirelessly to battle the ongoing blaze and so.
Listen, am I crazy? But why is it cut so precise? Look at this. Look how precise. There's not like, it's not like a hole, with a bunch of debris. This looks like someone cut it like, with a chainsaw. Look at this. Look how perfect that cut is. I mean, this is a normal explosion here, but this is like, what kind of material do you use?
The rubble for survivors. The reinforced structure posed a problem for firefighters. Wood used to support the roof was burning, spreading along either side of the place where the plane had hit, and firefighters were unable to get to it. They eventually resorted to making fire breaks, purposefully destroying sections of the Pentagon to stop the further spread of the fire. Less than an hour after impact, first responders were forced to evacuate the building when a huge section of the upper floors collapsed, creating a hole in the building 95 feet wide and 50 feet deep. Even while the fires were still raging, Secretary Rumsfeld was continuing to work in his Pentagon office. When it was suggested that operations be moved off-site, Rumsfeld refused and, in an evening press briefing, claimed that the Pentagon was still functioning. In fact, most workers in non-damaged sections of the buildings returned to work as usual the next day. A total of 189 people were killed in the crash and fires at the Pentagon. The 64 people on board the plane, including 5 hijackers, never stood a chance. They were killed instantly, their bodies found in small fragments, if they were found at all. A further 125 people within the Pentagon were killed, 70 civilians and 55 members of the military. Military personnel killed.
Imagine you're just chilling, you're finally in the Pentagon, you're like, one day I'm going to be a general, and you just look out the window and a freaking plane comes? What was that like?
Or injured in the attack were considered to be casualties of war and were awarded the Purple Heart Medal, just as they would have been if they'd been in combat.
Well,
the dead included
Lieutenant
Timothy Maud, the U.S. Army's Deputy Chief of Staff Personnel, who was the highest-ranking military officer killed in action since World War II. The death toll might have been much higher, but for the fact that the plane happened to strike the one section of the Pentagon that had already mostly been renovated by the Penn-Ren project. The renovations included enhanced fire suppression systems and steel reinforcement to the internal structure of the building to withstand bomb blasts, which prevented an instantaneous collapse of the upper floors of the damaged section and gave workers enough time to evacuate. The newly installed blast-resistant windows held up during the impact, and they didn't shatter, preventing injuries from flying glass as seen in the bombings in Oklahoma City and Nairobi. Because the renovations were still ongoing, only 800 people were in the section of the Pentagon at the time, far less than the 4,500 that usually worked there, which certainly reduced the total number of victims.
From the ashes.
It was initially estimated that it would take 3 years to rebuild the damaged section of the Pentagon. The contractors already hired to do the renovation work were given the additional job of repairing the damage to the building, which was called Project Phoenix. The contractors went to work with what was described as patriotic fervor, with the goal of having the damage completely repaired and reopened to employees by the first anniversary of the attack. Workers completely demolished the damaged portions of the outer structure and replaced them with identical materials so that there would be no visible seam in the building to scar it. All the new features so recently installed in the renovation were replicated. Project Phoenix finished ahead of schedule, reopening for business only 11 months after the plane struck the building. The disaster also gave the Penn-Ren project additional ideas for improvement. Metro and bus terminals were moved further away from the Pentagon as a security measure, and nearby roads were diverted in an arc around the building.
Imagine you take the metro and you're like, you know what, I go from my house directly to my job, it's very easy, and now you have to walk, 20 minutes to your job. I mean, I don't know, piece of shit for even saying it. It's unsafe. But fuck you, man. I don't want to walk every morning, 20 minutes.
For a car or truck bomb to get close to it. A new shipping and receiving center was built to provide a secure place for deliveries to the Pentagon, again with the goal of not allowing vehicles to get too close to the structure. An outdoor Pentagon memorial was dedicated on the 7th anniversary of the attack in 2008 with 184 benches, each engraved with the name of...
You know what? 184 people died, in this building where they thought they were safe. How can we commemorate their sacrifice, their deaths? Let's make benches. Who came up with that idea? Benches? You die? Bench? That's the thing? A bench.
Of a victim on it. Penryn was completed in 2010, 4 years ahead of schedule, even allowing for the extra time needed to rebuild the wrecked section from the attack. The Pentagon is now considered completely up to modern standards for an office building while still maintaining its place on the National Register of Historic Places with its historic facade. In addition to the structural improvements, a new gym and library were also built to better serve the employees that work in the building every day. Tours of the building have been offered to visitors in the past, though these have been suspended due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The Pentagon continues to remain a lightning rod for controversy and dissent. It is common in military parlance to refer to decisions and instructions made by senior military officials as coming from the Pentagon, just as an order from the president is said to have come from the White House. In this way, the building itself is so closely associated with the work contained within it that it will be impossible to separate one from the other. With this in mind, it makes sense that when a group of 15,000 protesters organized in Washington, D.C. in 2007 to voice their disapproval with the ongoing Iraq War, they ended their march in front of the Pentagon, evoking
50,000 people march, there's a protest, and nothing happens. Or did something happen? Tell me, okay? I'm not trying to be a dick here, but when was the last time that a protest worked? When? 1968? With the... I mean, when?
The spirit of the anti-war demonstrations from 40 years before. Unlike those protests, however, this one ended peacefully. While there hasn't been a major terrorist incident at the Pentagon since September the 11th, the building's status as a symbol of American military power has inspired some violent incidents perpetrated by lone wolf offenders. In 2010, a man approached a security checkpoint at the Pentagon metro station, pulled out a gun and opened fire, wounding 2 police officers before being killed in an exchange of gunfire. The man had expressed extremist views online about the American government, including the military, being too large and tyrannical.
And that's how you're gonna take down the military? You go to a fucking checkpoint with one gun? I'm gonna go on a limb here and say it was a handgun. You go to the biggest, the headquarters of the military with a gun?
On August 3rd, 2021, in an incident still being investigated at the time we're making this video, a mentally disturbed man got off a bus near the Pentagon and attacked police officer George Gonzalez, fatally stabbing him before being shot to death by other officers. Gonzalez is one of 2 Pentagon police officers to be killed in the line of duty. In the 80 years since the
You know how much it must suck that you get killed by some crazy person? You're just, doing your job, relaxing, trying to stop people from coming into the building, and a fucking nut job comes with a knife. Did you see a knife? I think he said a knife. Something with an object and kills you.
Pentagon was built, it has gone from being a mere office building to something more. The nerve center of the entire United States military is run out of this unique 5-sided building. In fact, in a major crisis such as a war, all the essential functions of governments can be conducted there. But it is perhaps more important as a symbol of the power and might of the US defense apparatus, just as the World Trade Center was a symbol of American commerce. Being such a symbol makes it vulnerable to another attack, but it is believed that with the lessons learned from September the 11th, that a similar tragedy won't happen again, and the Pentagon will continue to be a home base for the Department of Defense for decades to come. America's modern military fortress. So I really hope you
Yeah, so that was a great video. I learned a lot. I didn't know when it was built. It was built in 47. That it was made out of concrete because there was not enough steel, for the war. But yeah, overall, great video. Really informative. Learned a lot. I hope you did too. Leave a like if you did. Tell me in the comments what you thought about the video and my commentary. And I'll see you guys next time. See you guys.